Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Matt Harris, the United States Marshal for the District of Utah. I wanted to take this time to address several issues related to the September 18th Salt Lake District Attorney's Office press release and subsequent public comments made by DA Sim Gill thereafter. The purpose of that release was for the DA to disclose its findings of a United States Marshal Task Force officer-involved shooting that occurred on February 13th, 2020. This weekend, we presented a rebuttal to several inaccurate public comments made by DA Sim Gill, and we take issue with the seemingly political positions shown in the body of the report and comments made publicly by the DA. Specifically, the DA's office should not be lobbying the state legislature and how this task force operates, especially in the body of an officer-involved shooting report. We also question the motivation in trying to drive a wedge between the federal and local partnerships during this critical time in history. The danger of erroneous comments is that they fuel misperceptions of the truth and lead to further divisiveness in this already highly charged political climate. Similarly, we question the nature of how the information was presented to us before its release. I appreciate the DA investigators' hard work on this matter, who concluded that the officer-involved shooting of the armed man was justified. I cannot say enough about the composure, professionalism, and strength of our task force officers who were on the scene that day and who are the glue that keeps this task force together. I want to give you some context. The United States Marshal Service Violent Fugitive Apprehension Team, more commonly known as VFAST, in coordination with state and local officials, arrests approximately 800 violent fugitives a year in Utah. The majority of those arrests, roughly 70%, are violent state fugitives who are arrested at the request of state and local agencies. These criminals are violent, convicted felons who are intentionally trying to evade capture. They are dangerous, they are on the run, and they are a threat to our communities. In 2019 alone, VFAST arrested Utah fugitives in 18 different states and 29 counties, and half of Utah's 29 counties. This year alone, we've arrested 6 fugitives wanted for homicide. 94% of the offenders arrested by VFAST have a violent criminal history. A requirement for local agencies to participate in any federal task force is to follow the United States Department of Justice guidelines and federal policy that strictly prohibits the use of body-worn cameras in fugitive operations. Contrary to the DA's public comments, this is not a scenario where a federal agency is using state and local resources. This is a scenario where state and local agencies reach out to us, ask for our help at their request, because they realize collectively with the federal and state agencies that our streets are safer when we work together. There is nothing I value more than our state and local partnerships. And I'm not going to allow an outside agenda to divide these relationships. There's a time to inject a discussion on whether body-worn cameras is good public policy. But to inject this discussion into the findings of an officer-involved shooting report is regrettable. The issuance of reports of officer-involved shootings should be independent of political and personal opinions, both in writing and discourse. In closing, I want to reiterate our support for our state and local agencies that participate in VFAST. I want to especially thank Harriman Police Department, specifically Sergeant Ricks and Homeland Security Officer Jarrett Holland, for their ability to respond appropriately and legally during an intense situation is evidenced by the investigation findings. Equally important, I want to thank K9 Hondo, whose service on the police force and ultimate sacrifice of his life helped protect human partners. Simply put, without the involvement of K9 Hondo, the outcome for those officers would have been different. The work we're able to do on this task force is because of the unique partnerships we have with our federal, state, and local agencies. And nowhere in America is that relationship stronger than it is here in Utah. What I do know with certainty is that some of the best and bravest law enforcement officers wear a local badge in Utah and work side by side with us on this task force. And they work with us in compliance with DOJ policy and Marshal Service policy. Thank you. Take some questions, whether you want to do one-on-ones or whether you want to do
I'm happy to do it.
you want, come.
Not knowing all the background, sorry, was District Attorney Sim Gill, did he make some sort of statement about the use or non-use of body cameras?
Yes.
You're telling me the policy is you don't use them anyway.
Right. So in the report, in the body of the report, in a footnote, they decided to lobby the state legislature, make comments on how this task force should operate, and went after the DOJ policy that, that we're prohibited from wearing body-worn cameras. My position, the position of my office is there's a time and place for that discussion, not in the body of a report that exonerates an officer involved in a critical shooting. It's not appropriate.
I've not talked to Sim Gill yet, anticipating what he would say was, if not now, when? We're looking at a critical incident. I wish I would have had some video. When should I bring it up?
His job is to call balls and strikes. That's his job. It diminishes his report. It diminishes the status of his office when he gets political, both in writing and thereafter in his public comments.
So are you talking about his writing public comments? Is this like the 12 pages?
The body of the report, and then thereafter his interview with KSL.
Okay. As far as the false statements go, can you give us what it was that you felt was misrepresented, either in the text or
There are several things. I mean, one of the main issues that I have, my job here is to protect my task force. I've got 90 guys statewide, 19 different agencies who work on this task force, who give their blood, sweat, and tears every day. The nature of our work is violent. It's tough. It's hard-charging. All police work is dangerous. The nature of our work is more dangerous than anybody else's. And so my problem, one of my problems, is that his assertion is that this task force operates using state and local resources. It's the contrary. This task force operates at the request of state and local agencies who don't have the money, who don't have the resources, who don't have the time to do it themselves. And now, in an environment where we're trying to defund the police, where people don't want to be a cop, where local departments here have seen incredibly reduced budgets, now is the time for us to work together. It has to happen. And so those comments that essentially that the federal agencies are running amok, doing their own thing, we work at their request. It's 70% of what we do in this office we do for state and local agencies.
When you're in a situation, I'm guessing that in this particular case as well, where you have both U.S. Marshals and local law enforcement working together.
Yes.
Would the local law enforcement be using their body cameras if that's their policy during the same operation?
Part of the requirement to operate in a DOJ task force is to abide by DOJ policy. Current DOJ policy prohibits the use of body-worn cameras. Officers know that. They sign an agreement, and before we brief, before we do operations, we brief, and they're warned to turn off your cameras. They're instructed to turn off those cameras because that is our policy. As I said, there's a time and place for that discussion, but to do it in the body of this report where you're exonerating two officers who had their lives turned upside down, because of this, it's really regrettable.
Would you invite Sim Gills to sit down at a table and talk this through?
I was invited there to have a briefing of the report last week, and we were blindsided by several of these issues. So, yeah, I would still invite him to do so, but I would hope that there was a little bit more, they were a little bit more honest with us. Yeah.
So I guess, were you thinking that there would have, should have, could have been a discussion about the body camera part of this when you met in person before you included that?
Absolutely. We were never given the opportunity to comment on the body-worn camera issue, either this office or, to my understanding, collectively DOJ. We would have, presented that information. Furthermore, we weren't informed in the briefing that this was going to be a critical part of their findings. How do you leave that out of a public briefing with another law enforcement agency? I don't know.
So did you guys not get the report in advance?
No, we were. If you read the press release that we put out this weekend and again today, one of the issues that we have, many, is that we were promised that report to provide comment in advance, and it was never sent to us.
Does this put a divide in between federal and the county and the state?
Never, never, no. There's nothing more important than our relationships, and we're going to continue to work with those state and local agencies, regardless of the noise, regardless of the political comments and the sideshow. We're going to because that's, we don't get political. We put bad guys in jail, and we don't care how we do it, but we want to keep this community safe. Violent crime will be on the rise. We see it. We need to all work together. So I'm not going to let, and my office is not going to let, some sidebar issue affect us, because our relationships are with those local departments, with those officers, with those police chiefs, with those sheriffs, because those are our partners, and they will always be our partners.
If you weren't given a chance to address the body camera issue before, how would you address it now? I mean, I guess given the chance to go over it again, to see the report in advance, how would you have responded, either to Gill or to the public, on that issue?
I'm not following you.
So if you're saying you didn't get a chance to respond to the body camera issue before you put it out there, what would you respond?
Well, we would have provided DOJ policy. We would have talked about the working group that is currently going on nationwide, Salt Lake City being one of those working groups. Salt Lake City is not a part of the task force at the present time, so it doesn't apply. But
what's the working group?
there's a Department of Justice working group currently that's been going on for maybe a year or so, where they're trying this out in certain cities around the country, because some departments would like to see that, right? But this is a big department issue. This is a big DOJ issue. The time and the place for that, it's not here. I'm not saying that discussion does not need to happen. What I'm just saying is that it's regrettable, it's unfortunate, and it's political that it happened right now.
And so we are to understand that this DOJ policy, this comes from Washington.
This is department policy.
This isn't even state, this isn't local,
No.
this is way up.
This is department policy. So, those questions we refer to the policy, we refer to Maine Justice, but we operate in the confines of the law. And those agencies that join this task force, they know that. What we do is highly dangerous and it's highly risky, and we've got great people. So.
When there is a case that is then put up for review to find out if it's a justified act by your marshals,
Yes.
is it typically given to county officials, or how usually?
Yeah. Currently, there's two options, right? So there's a protocol team, depending on who the protocol team at the time is, receives the investigation, or there's a rotation or such. And they take the investigation and they present it to the DA's office. There is an opportunity, if the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney sees fit, to take that investigation and have the FBI do that investigation. We have that right. The Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, has that right. So there is that option, yes.
Moving forward, I'm sure you want to maintain good relations with local law enforcement. What would you like to do, or what would you like to see coming back to you? There's kind of a tense situation today, but how do you make that better?
Our relationships with our departments are fantastic, and we're always looking for ways to make them better. We're always looking for ways to grow our task force, to put more bad guys in jail, the worst of the worst. This doesn't change a thing. It doesn't change a thing for us. This is my office letting the 90 task force officers that work for us here, that work for me, that work for my task force commander, okay, and the local officers in this city and in this valley, that you work with us, we're going to have your back. You know, we're going to have your back. And if we mess up, and if there's issues that we have, we will hold people accountable when appropriate. But this is a good shoot. This is a shoot that is unfortunate, that the subject unfortunately dictated the ending. And what you see nationwide is generally that's what's going on. But this doesn't change our relationships, and I hope this makes it stronger.
As you talk about the atmosphere out there generally right now, with the defund police and all that stuff going on, how do you address that now with your officers, and whether they're high profile, low profile in their everyday actions moving, you know?
So you're talking about the climate in general, like with my staff?
Yeah, I'm assuming that you do a lot of stuff undercover, or I'm not sure exactly if this
Sure.
affects your
Yeah.
public face in normal operations.
No, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm following your question exactly, but like I said, this doesn't really change the way we operate. You know, I mean, we go out and we're in plain clothes, but we're marked. We have U.S. Marshals, we have vests. You know, it's very clearly who we are, but it doesn't change the way we operate. What may change long term, though, is if these agencies, you know, don't have budgets to, you know, and that would make, and that's where we come in, right? And the Department of Justice is well funded. This office is well funded. We have tools and resources that state and local agencies don't have. We have the reach of the long arm of the law. As I mentioned earlier, we arrested last year Utah fugitives, you know, sex offenders, rapists, murderers from Utah that were hiding in other states. That's the benefit. It brings them back here for justice. Yeah. Those families, you know, those rape victims deserve justice, right? And that's where we come in, because sometimes state and local agencies can't go beyond the state lines. They have to be deputized U.S. Marshals. They have to work with us and utilize our resources and our extradition team.
In the footnote, he, you know, as you say, lobbies the state legislature on this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, could the state of Utah require body cams on one of your operations?
No,
Or
not at the present time.
could they even make a law? that
I mean,
required
what
local
this could do is cause a divide and cause friction, and that's what we don't want to happen. You know, you work it out at the department level. You work it out what is sound policy. There's a time and a place for sound policy. You know, to your question, I'm not negating your question, but what I am saying is that we could have that discussion. The department could have that discussion. They are having that discussion, right? But why here? Why right now? The job of that office is to call balls and strikes, right? It's not to get political. They could lobby the legislature in a white paper. They could go up on the Hill and testify in committee. But don't do it when you're exonerating my officers.
So just one more time to sink. So when I go to the DI's office and said, they said you said this, which is false. What is the, if you can kind of give me a nugget of right.
The way we operate. The way we operate.
The way we operate.
The way we operate. Yes.
And that having to do with using state resources
yes.
versus using your own resources.
Yes. You know, everybody in the know knows this is how it works. You know, these agencies call us. You know, I'll give you an example of how this works. There's an agency in this state that worked for a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, to find a fugitive. And they didn't call us. Okay? They didn't call us. They just didn't. I called the chief of police and said, hey, I see you got a fugitive. Do you mind if we take that case? We could help you out. Oh, Matt, I would love to. We referred the case that morning. That guy that they were looking for 3 to 4 weeks, we caught in 2 hours. Okay? That's what the state and locals get. That's the relationship we get. We put everything aside and I said, go help that chief, go help that PD, go build good relationships. I don't care what we have going on right now. In 2 hours, we found the guy. That's what we do.
So I guess the next thing I asked about on the the issue of like the way that you guys operate,
Mhm.
what is the effect of his comments? Like, in other words, why are you upset? Like, or how would the non-law enforcement public perceive you guys incorrectly based on what he said? I know that's
Because right now there's this, you saw what's going on in Portland, you see what's going on in Seattle, right? There's this us versus them, federal versus state issue. And I don't need the DA to drive that wedge further, and especially not here. We got great relationships. That's the impact. I don't want somebody to read those comments, in KSL or wherever, and say, hey, there's those feds again. They did it in Portland. Now they're going to do it here.
So the message to those people who would be thinking that way was,
We work together. Federal and state agencies work together.
on the issue of the body camera, you said that
Yeah.
Salt Lake is part of this pilot program, or what
Yeah.
was it? How would you describe it?
So there's a working group, I believe, in 6 different cities nationwide. Salt Lake City PD is part of that working group. They have task force officers, I believe, on the DEA task force. Maybe not anymore. Maybe the FBI. So you'd have to talk to Chief Brown or the Bureau or DEA on exactly how that works. Yeah.
So they have Salt Lake City police officers who are wearing body cameras when they participate in federal operations. It just so happens that theirs are with DEA and not you guys.
That's right, and I believe there's some sort of policy with ATF as well. I'm not sure what that is. Salt Lake City we don't have on our task force. They have limited resources like everybody else. But yeah, so I don't know how that works. I know there's that working group.
Do you
So.
know how it's going? I mean,
I have no clue.
Is this something that you think you guys will be doing too? At some point?
It's a possibility. Sure, everything's. I mean, it's a year ago. This was not even an issue. It was a small issue. It's certainly a percolating issue, and certainly it's an issue that probably needs to get looked at. I said it 5 times here. I'll say it again. This is not the time for it. There's an appropriate venue for that.
Would that come from the federal level as to whether or not you?
That would come from the Department of Justice working with the lobby groups. They say Major City Chiefs Association, National Sheriff's Association, and those partnerships. So we would come at the very highest level of the Department of Justice, on the criminal division, likely.
So, I mean, this is getting a bit out in a hypothetical.
Yeah.
But if, let's say, Gill goes up there and beats on the door at the Capitol and convinces enough people to pass a law in Utah, is that a law that would stand? Or I guess how would you guys react? You guys having locals that are required
I mean,
by this Capitol.
listen, it's generally our policy not to comment on state law. But what I can comment on is that the impact that state law may have on our operations, and when you're doing 70% of your work, they're state and local fugitives, and 94% of them are violent, do the math. What's going to happen in this community? What's going to happen in the cities? Crime's going to go up. There's no doubt about it.
Well, like if the state were to force you guys, or not you guys, but force the local officers that would be on your task force to wear them.
Well, essentially, they could. They could do that, but then DOJ policy would conflict that. Then there would be no task force. Then there would be 800, 900, 1,000 fugitives running around that aren't getting arrested. And we already know that state and local agencies have reduced resources. Their funding is getting cut. There's a defund the police movement. So that will be the impact. I promise that. So the solution is a solution with the Department of Justice and these other agencies. So these other lobby groups. It's not for us here.
In the shooting of Brian Fillion, who called you guys? for
Nick,
help?
you want to talk about that?
My name is Nick Chernus. I'm the supervisor over our Fugitive Task Force. It was Adult Probation Pro that called us on that specific case. And they're also participating members of our task force. Is that it? Thank you.